Hello, this is another tale for the Halloween season. A slightly gentler one than the kinds of things I normally tell, but it has a spectral feel to it nonetheless. It's a traditional Welsh story. Hundreds of years ago, living on the banks of the River Mynarch was an old woman called Megan. Now, Megan was as poor could be. She had to her name just, well, you can't even really call it a house. It was little more than a shack that she lived in. And she lived in it with one aged cow and one little kitten. Every morning she would wade across the Mynarch, which in those days was very little more than a stream, and she would take her old cow Daisy to the other side of the river bank where it could graze on the lush pastures that side. And every evening she would go back out and she would bring old Daisy across and milk her, and that milk would provide her with nourishment for the day and nourishment for the cat, and sometimes there was enough left over to provide for cheese and other delicacies. That night, well, maybe she was tired, she was certainly old and getting frail, but when she took old Daisy across in the morning, come the evening, she had fallen asleep. Whether through tiredness, whether through exhaustion, whether through old age, whether through something slightly more sinister, who can say, but she slept the sleep of the just. Such a deep sleep that not only did she forget to bring poor old Daisy back in, but she didn't even hear the rain falling upon the roof. Huge torrents of rain fell all through the night and into the next day, and she woke late, several hours later than she normally awoke. And when she realised, bleary-eyed, that it was in fact now daytime and that poor old Daisy had been out all night long, she quickly dressed and staggered out of her hut, the little kitten mewing at her feet. And she wiped her eyes and saw that the rain was still falling, and there, where normally was this stream of the Mynarch, was now a thundering, roaring great river, 5 times wider than it had ever been before, and as many times deeper, if not more than that. And she stood on the banks of the river with the rain still falling and the waters thundering and roaring past her, and tears streaming down her old face. For she could not see how on earth she could ever get poor old Daisy back, and there was the cow. She could see her mooing distressedly on the other side of this great torrent. And a voice behind her said, "Mother, mother, why do you weep?" And turning round, she saw a man in a monk's robe, the robes of a Dominican monk. And she said, "Brother, my cow is on the other side of the river. Normally I am out in the evening to bring her back, but I fell asleep last night, such a deep sleep, I didn't awake and bring poor old Daisy back in time. And now look, the rain has fallen and fallen and fallen, and where once there was but a stream, there is now a torrent. How will I ever get the poor cow back? She'll be over there until she dies of the cold. And as for me, what will I drink? What will I have to trade in the marketplace?" "Well, mother," said the monk, "I am something of a miracle worker. I will conjure forth for you a bridge of stone, that you might cross this river and retrieve your cow." And at once the old woman said, "Oh, praised be. It's as if a miracle has come from God." And the figure flinched, and in flinching the hem of his monk's habit twitched a little away, and she caught a glimpse in her rheumy eye of something peeking out from underneath the hem of his monk's habit, this stranger. And it was not a foot, or at least it was a kind of foot, inasmuch as it was a hoof. And Megan knew the kind of visitor she had. And at once she said, brother, generous though your offer may be, I am but a humble old woman. I have nothing to my name but a cow and the hut behind me and the clothes I stand up in. How could I possibly pay you? What could I possibly offer you in exchange for a bridge? And he said, Woman, do not worry about money. I have all the money I could ever possibly want. In exchange for building you a bridge, I will take the soul of the first living thing to cross the bridge. Do you agree? And the old woman, fearful to disagree, because you don't cross the hoofed one, said, If it is your will, brother, it is my will too. Well, old woman, go back to your hut and prepare yourself for the day, whilst I attend to the building of the bridge. And when it is done, I will call you. Well, old Megan went back to her hut, but she peeked out through a crack in the window, and she watched that hooded figure, robe swishing in the dampness of the grass, begin to mutter and call and imprecate and summons boulders that were being swept down from the mountainside, and the boulders flew up out of the waters of the raging river, and they began to clump one to another, to another, to another, until she had seen them form a natural stone bridge arching over what was now the flooding torrent of the River Mynarch. When he was done, this monk, this hooded figure, said, Megan, old woman, your bridge is ready, will you not come? And the old woman, looking around her little hut, hoping, praying for some inspiration, saw what was left of some old fish heads that she had been boiling up from a couple of days earlier. Fish she'd caught in the little pool downriver, which was now doubtless swept away in the great torrents of river water. And she took one of these fish heads and slipped it in the sleeve. And she went out. And the rain had stopped falling, but the river was still thundering with water. And there she stood on the side, next to the monk. And she saw the bridge. It was thin enough. She could cross it, the cow could cross it, but nonetheless, she said, Brother, this bridge that you have built so rapidly, so fast, I barely had time to wrap a shawl around my shoulders. This bridge, will it take my weight? I mean, I know I'm a thin old woman, but nonetheless, if I walk upon it, will it not collapse under me? Collapse! Said the figure with the cloven hooves. Collapse? How dare you suggest it will collapse? It will take your weight, it will take your cow's weight, it will take the weight of 10 strong men, let alone one frail old woman and one wizened old cow. Now, who is the first to cross it? You or Daisy? And remember, whichever one of you crosses it first, I claim for my own. Well, the old woman stood there umming and ahhing and said, Brother, I don't question your efficiency and your speed at building bridges, but let me first see if it will take the weight of this humble fish head. And she produced it from her sleeve, and the monastic figure looked at her and well, could think of no particular objection to make to the casting of an already dead fish head upon the bridge. But the old woman threw it, and the fish landed. And the monk looked at the fish, and then looked at the old woman, and the old woman looked at the fish, and then looked at the monk. I said, well, it seems to be taking the weight. And before the devil, for who else was it, could reply, like a little streak of white lightning, a certain kitten that had been hiding in the hut took one sniff of the fish head upon the bridge and was across the bridge, gnawing at the fish head. And the first living thing to cross the devil's bridge, of course, was the cat. And that devil roared, and he thundered, and he stamped his hooves, and the hood fell back, revealing him in all of his odious presence. And he said, what use to me is a cat? Ah, But a deal is a deal is a deal, said old Megan. You said the first living thing, and the first living thing was the cat. And at once the devil disappeared in a puff of sulphur, and so did the small white cat. Old Megan was able to walk across that bridge, which did indeed bear her weight, and bore the weight of the cow that she brought back with her. And she lived for many a long year yet, drinking well of the cow's milk. And as for the devil, well, whilst the bridge at Ceredigion stood for many a long year before being replaced by an artificial one of human creation rather than demonic, it is said still that on particularly rainy, stormy nights, when the River Mynarch is boiling and thundering away, sometimes amidst the thunder in the sky you can hear the stampede of the devil's horse as its hooves strike upon the clouds, raining sparks down like lightning. You can hear the howl of the devil's hounds as they search out the souls of the wicked to prey upon them and drag them down to the very bowels of hell beneath the earth. And sometimes in the lull between the thunder and the lightning, you can hear meow of the devil's cat as it sits on his lap, purring contentedly.